Welcome to the Teaching You to Fish podcast, financial literacy for the rest of us. My name is Carl Fish, and I'm the host of this podcast. This is episode 3, Spending and Saving, Part 1. Your savings rate, aligning your spending with your values and goals, and a growth of savings calculator. Many people spend a lot of time talking about how to get rich in the stock market. I'll certainly spend a little time later in this series on the topic of investments, but a key point to remember is that you can't control what the market returns. The market is going to do its thing, no matter what you do. What you can control is how much you save, and therefore how much you invest. Your savings rate is much more important than trying to beat the market with your investments. And here's the thing, your savings rate is really just a reflection of your spending. While there are certainly things you can do to increase your income, on a day-to-day basis, most people have much more discretion over what they spend than over what they make. So your savings rate is pretty much going to be determined by your spending. Spend less, save more, and then invest more. There have been entire books written about this, but this is the Carl's Notes version. Sorry, Cliff and Spark. In general, spending on things doesn't bring you happiness. Spending on experiences that are meaningful to you is more likely to increase your happiness. Human beings adjust quickly to new circumstances. In terms of spending, this is often referred to as the hedonic treadmill. When you buy something new, you experience pleasure for a little while, then you get used to it, and you need to buy something else to get a new fix. As your income, hopefully, increases over time, so does your lifestyle. So things that used to be luxuries are now considered necessities, and you begin inflating your lifestyle to match your new earnings. This is often referred to as lifestyle creep. Once you get on this hedonic treadmill, it's hard to get off. Keeping up with the Joneses is a cliche, but it's a cliche that is based in truth. The problem is that your neighbors, or friends, or family's spending is visible, and their savings isn't. When your next door neighbor gets a new car, you'll probably see it. When your next door neighbor contributes more to their 401k, you probably won't. The evolution of this comparison game is that 30 years ago, the Joneses that you compared yourself to were just your closest neighbors and a few of your very close friends. Nowadays, the Joneses are those people, plus the few hundred friends you may have on social media. Be careful with the comparisons. Opportunity cost is an economic term, but it's pretty easy to understand. If you spend money or time on one thing, you don't have that money or time available to spend on something else. Every time you buy something, ask yourself if 6 months later you'll look at that purchase and still be glad you made it. Or go through your credit card statement line by line and ask the same thing. Every time you're about to buy something, ask yourself, what else could I spend this money on? Opportunity cost, and make the decision that will make you the happiest. Spending isn't bad, but spending on things that don't align with your values and goals can be bad. So this doesn't mean you can't ever buy stuff, but it means you need to be more intentional about it. Every $100 in spending per month that you can cut out will turn into $150,000 30 years from now. Assuming you invest $100 every month and earn 8% annual return, that's opportunity cost. Be more explicit with your goals. Instead of saying, I want to save more, say, I want to save X% of my income so that we can buy a house in 3 years. Many people want to know how much they should save. 10% of what they make? 15%? For me, that's the wrong way to go about it. You should figure out what makes you happy, what kind of life you want to live, what your goals are, and then act and spend and save accordingly. I will say that for anyone making the median or better income, I think saving 10% is way too low. Most of us manage to live on less than 50% of what we are making now, when we were in college or when we first moved out on our own, and life was still pretty good. Get off the hedonic treadmill, avoid lifestyle creep, and make intentional choices, and you'll find that you can save much more than you thought possible. Let's take a look at what seemingly small changes can amount to over time due to the power of compound interest. Open this Google spreadsheet by typing in the link or clicking on the link in the slides. It will ask you to make a copy so that you have an editable version. Click Make a Copy. This spreadsheet allows you to set a goal for how much money you'd like to have saved, cell E6, with a default of 1 million, in a certain number of years, cell E8, with a default of 30 years. Some people worry that 30 years is too long and they aren't planning on working for that many more years. But it's important to keep in mind that saving and investing doesn't stop when you retire. It stops when you die, or even later if you plan on leaving a legacy to your heirs. Likely, everyone watching this, hopefully, has at least 30 years of life expectancy left, so I would suggest leaving it at 30 years, or even changing it to a higher number, but you can, of course, change it to whatever number you'd like. Starting in cell B12, there's a sample list of items that you could give up or change. In column C, there's a drop-down menu to choose how often you make the purchase, daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, or one time. In column D is the cost of that item. For example, the sample item in row 12 is drink water instead of soft drinks, which is purchased daily for a cost of $2.50. The spreadsheet then calculates that would grow to be worth $86,195 30 years from now, taking the money you saved from not buying the soft drinks and investing it instead. Make sure for the frequency you choose how often you pay for the item, not how often you do it. For example, while you may work out daily, the amount you pay for a gym membership is likely monthly, so you would choose monthly in the drop-down. All of the items listed in the spreadsheet are just examples. You can change the item, the amount, or both, or delete an item altogether. Note that if there is an expense you add, then you enter a negative number in column D for the amount, which then displays in parentheses. But you only need to do this if you are adding an expense you don't currently have, perhaps in order to compensate for something else you've cut. For example, let's look at row 12, drink water instead of soft drinks. If this is not something you want to include in your spreadsheet, either because you already drink water instead of soft drinks, in which case this isn't an additional savings for you, or because you don't want to give up those soft drinks, you could do one of three things. You could delete the entire row. You could change the amount in cell D12 to 0. Or you could change the item in cell B12 to something else you'd like to change. And then you could change the dollar amount and frequency as well. It's very important that you end up only with the things that apply to you, not just the examples I've included to get you started. This will mean that you will likely delete or change many of the samples I've included, but also that you'll add many more items that I have not included that are specific to you. Take the time to really think this through. Maybe even go through your bank and credit card statements to see what you've been spending money on, paying particular attention to recurring auto pays for various memberships and subscriptions. Once you've removed any that don't apply to you, or modified the amount or frequency, and added any others you can think of, then cell G10 will show your total annual savings, and cell E10 will show you the entire amount you have in X number of years, again the default being 30 years, from taking the savings and investing it instead. In my example, it shows that with these additions to my savings and then investing those savings, after 30 years I would have $949,015. Your number will be different, but this shows the impact that even relatively small differences in spending can amount to over time due to the power of compound interest. Then over to the right, it will indicate the percent of your goal you will have achieved simply by eliminating those items. 94.90% is what's showing when you first open the spreadsheet, but it will change as you add or change things for yourself. Now let's do a quick bonus exercise. Make a note of the amount in cell G10. For me, this is $8,865. That's my total yearly savings. Then we're going to return to the When Can I Retire calculator that we used in episode 2. In the calculator, you'll want to start by entering the same three numbers you entered when you completed this in episode 2. Your current annual income, your current annual savings, and your current portfolio value. And then click Crunch the Numbers. It's important that you enter the same three numbers you did the first time, and it should give you the same results. The example I did in episode 2 was a total income of $80,000, a current annual savings of $10,000, and a current portfolio value of $20,000. So I'll enter those in again just like last time. This gives me 40.6 years until I reach financial independence. But now we're going to add in the additional savings you calculated using the growth of savings calculator, the amount in cell G10 that you made a note of earlier. Take the amount from cell G10 and add it to the previous savings amount you had in current annual savings. For me, my total yearly savings from the spreadsheet was $8,865. So when I add that to the previous savings amount I had of $10,000, my new amount in current annual savings is going to be $18,865. Your amount will be different, but should be the sum of your additional savings plus what you are already saving. After you enter in the new amount, click Crunch the Numbers again. This will now give you the new number of years until financial independence if you implement those additional savings. For me, it took my years from 40.6 to 29 years, a decrease of over 11 years. You should also see a decrease, but the magnitude will depend on how much additional savings you had relative to how much you were saving before. Again, just like we talked about in episode 2, take this new number seriously, but not too seriously. But you definitely can take the number of years it has decreased very seriously. This difference in years is a pretty accurate indication of how many fewer years it would take you to become financially independent if you did make those changes in spending. If you are taking notes throughout this course, once you've completed the spreadsheet and the calculator, take a screenshot of both and add them to your notes for reference. I'd also suggest adding a link to your copy of the spreadsheet so that you can return to it if you want to. Then, perhaps write a paragraph or two reflection on this exercise, summarizing your current thinking about this particular topic. If you're comfortable sharing your reflection, there are several ways to do that. If you're watching or listening to this on Spotify or YouTube, then you can leave your thoughts and/or your feedback questions in the comments. You can also always reach out to me directly on social media or via email. I'm Carl Fish on Blue Sky, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, or you can email me directly at carlfish@gmail.com. While intentional spending in every area is important, housing, transportation, and food are the three big rocks that can make the most difference. And we'll talk about those in our next episode, as well as work through an exercise on how much your car and your commute is really costing you.